Seems like it's been a while, but we're back with another amazing episode of the I Am Kind podcast. I'm your host, Ethan, and alongside me is my incredible co-host, Skyler.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Stand for Kind. Take a stand against bullying in your school and help spread of kindness and positivity by visiting www.standforkind.com.
In case you didn't know, April is Autism Awareness Month, which is the theme for our podcast today.
Autism is a spectrum disorder, which means symptoms can vary tremendously. Autism affects people in many different ways, from mild social issues to being completely nonverbal and very low functioning.
Autism is also quite a bit more common in people than you might think. In fact, I'm on the autism spectrum, and I'm very thankful to say that I'm one of the higher functioning individuals on the spectrum. Did you know that one of our founding fathers, yes, Thomas Jefferson, had autism? Today, we have a few guests to talk about the spectrum with us and to talk about the stigma around the label of autism.
We have two very special guests joining us today. First, we'd like to welcome Summer, an incredible mom with children on the spectrum. Welcome to the podcast, Summer.
Thank you.
Next, we'd like to welcome an incredible musical prodigy who was diagnosed at 4 years old with pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified, which is similar to Asperger's syndrome, but with a speech delay. At 7 years old, he released his first album and has performed on Good Morning America, The View, CNN, The Harry Connick Jr. Show, and recently was a contestant on America's Got Talent. Welcome to the podcast, Jacob Velazquez.
Thank you very much for having me.
Jacob, tell us about your story.
Jacob was 1 month old. We had called 911. He stopped breathing during the evening hours, and he was rushed to the hospital and was diagnosed with GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease. Basically, he was choking on his own reflux. So it was the most frightening evening I've had in my entire life. We had to get a monitor for Jacob while he was sleeping to monitor his breathing to make certain that if he stopped breathing, that the alarm would sound. And we had very many sleepless nights, nonetheless. But
Mom has told me that the alarm would go off if I just rolled over, and he would run up the stairs like 4 stairs at a time or something.
And so when Jacob was about 18 months of age, he developed a feeding disorder. He wasn't able to handle food with substance, with any texture, basically. He, projectile vomiting, it was really difficult. Everything had to be pureed. When he was 2 years of age, he developed a speech delay. So he was having feeding therapy at the age of 2, along with speech therapy. At the age of around 4, we started noticing that Jacob was having some was just showing signs of where he would, things had to be a certain way. He was obsessive over like light switches had to be a certain way. And if we turned the light switch on and I turned it off, he would run and turn it back on. And he was showing some patterns of just habits where if they were broken by anyone, he'd get really upset about it. And when we would go to friends' homes and there were kids playing, Jacob's interest would be running from room to room, looking at the fan spinning. And one of his favorite places when he was young was Home Depot, actually, and in the fan section. He was just had this obsession with fans spinning and car, the windshield wipers going back and forth. I saw some things that Jacob was doing that I wasn't accustomed to seeing. And so my wife and I decided to have him evaluated, and he was evaluated with PDD-NOS, pervasive developmental disorder with not otherwise specified, just a form of autism. One day, Mom was in the kitchen and she just heard some piano keys going off and, came into the living room, and there was Jacob kind of playing what I was playing the night before. So she called me at work. I saw it. I heard it. I couldn't believe it. And so we decided to get lessons for him. At the age of 4. And so Jacob started playing at 4 years of age. And when he was 5, we put it on YouTube. And one of the local stations got caught interest in it. And from there, and he was on the local news. And from that moment on, when he was the age of 5, before we knew it, he was flown to New York. He was on Good Morning America, performing Good Morning America, The View, CNN, Steve Harvey show, and then a few years later, Harry Connick Jr. show. And by the time that Jacob was 8 years of age, he was playing with orchestras. He was headlining with full orchestras, traveling to different countries, playing at events. And so age of last year, actually, Jacob tried out for America's Got Talent. And he got on the show, and he played piano and drums. And it's been quite a journey.
Wow, that is awesome. That is an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Jacob, how many instruments do you play?
I play about 8 or 9 instruments, including piano, drums, guitar, cello, bass, saxophone, harmonica, ukulele.
Wow, that is incredible. And how old are you again?
I'm 13.
13. Wow, that is so cool. That is so impressive to me.
Now on to Summer. Do you mind telling us your story?
Yeah, it's super exciting to be on with Jacob as well, and all the things that he's accomplished. I think that that's a really great example of, I think, when you give opportunities instead of take away, and label somebody as a problem, when you really just give them the opportunity and the accommodations they need, it's really exciting. And so I really appreciate being on the show, because it's kind of my chance to do that as well, just to kind of highlight how important it is to find those accommodations. So I have I have 3 children. 2 of them happen to be on this spectrum, and I was not like Jacob's family, where it was obvious at first. And so I wondered some things. You always go through the list. How's the eye contact? How much are they talking? And do some certain lights tend to bother him? So you go through this list, and you kind of see like, oh, yeah, like that's a little bit of concern, but look, he's got friends, or that's a little bit of concern. And then as both my children on the spectrum got older, we started to see more like they were not comfortable in their own skin. And I was like, something seems to be going on here that I can't see with my eyes. But had we not really gone through a lot of occupational therapy and different therapy to find out what's triggering them, what's really difficult for them, they'd still be walking around really stressed kids. So I think all the time about parents that made me feel like, what am I doing wrong? Why are my children, overwhelmed? Why is it hard to get them to school? Or why is it hard to come home, they fall apart, whatever, and really the child just needs a few accommodations. And we've started to understand that this is much more than, oh, this person's anxious or this person has a little bit of OCD. We've started to understand that they are truly, truly a gift to our family. And not in the sense that like they run around and talk to everybody in the room, and in the sense that they, always have the first and right thing to say, but in the sense that they truly kind of see the world that's more, a little bit more beautiful, I think. And then they're able to show that to us. As
I said earlier, there really is a stigma with the label of autism, and some of those who receive their diagnosis, one of the first things they will think is this bad? This is a bad thing. And I say it's really not. In fact, I say it's a good thing. It just makes you different, which is, I say, a good thing.
But speaking of like labels and stuff with autism, what are some challenges you currently face with being autistic?
Some challenges I'm faced with from being on the spectrum are things like understanding figures of speech, because I take things very literally. It's just how my brain works. And something else would be focusing on things that don't really capture my interest, and my mind is just wandering off to, whatever candy world it finds, or,
Right. And then how do you overcome stuff like that?
I think music is definitely one of the biggest ways I've overcome challenges like that, because music I've always just found as an outlet to kind of escape reality. And whenever I pick up an instrument, I feel invincible.
That's awesome. That is amazing.
It's a universal language, so you can speak to anyone and everyone in the world, right?
Absolutely. Every language. Music is every language. And I think it's incredible. All right. So, Jacob, have you ever been judged or bullied because of being autistic? And if so, what have you done to overcome that?
Some kids have called me weird, but I just, kind of interpret that in a different way than they're kind of intending, which is, weird just means different. And, like Taylor Swift says, if you're lucky enough to be different, don't ever change.
I love that. Yep. I think weird is awesome. Weird is unique. Weird is special. And weird is cool. So, for sure.
I like weird. It's one of my tasty little habits.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been called the same thing. And for a while, I'm like, I really got to mentally think it's good. It's a good thing. Take it as a compliment, even though they don't mean it that way.
If it as a compliment, you're not giving them what they want, so they lose and you win.
Jacob, how has music changed your life?
Music, again, is just another one of those outlets. I feel like music is such, it's like a universal language where, no matter what you play, anyone, no matter what culture they're from, where they're from, what language they speak, can understand it because it's, a universal language. And music, it always makes me happy when I get to pick up an instrument and hear these thoughts in my head or these emotions and then just be able to hear it in reality. That's, one of the coolest things about it.
That's really cool. I feel the same way about a lot of the hobbies I have. Speaking from experience, being on the spectrum, there's a lot of things that when I hear hear other people talking about things that have to do with a certain hobby that I am in, I might recognize those things and be like, "Oh, this is cool." So, Willie, what support is needed for both autistic kids and parents of autistic kids, and what is needed to remove the stigma around autism?
Okay, so I think first and foremost, early intervention I think is so important. If you get an early diagnosis, because there are a lot of facilities out there and there's a lot of help out there for children on the spectrum. And Jacob, as a young child, had many therapies: speech therapy, occupational therapy, feeding therapy, neurofeedback. He had a lot of different therapies, and early intervention is key because it can help them as they are developing with some of the things that they're struggling with. It's amazing how when Jacob was diagnosed, how we didn't even know ourselves how many people are on the spectrum. We went to a school when he was young, and when we would drop him off, it was incredible. It was a fully staffed school with children, just as many children as there were in a typical school. This is when before he started, because he did go to this was preschool. He went to a specialized school with children on the spectrum, and then Jacob went to a typical school from kindergarten through 6th and 7th and so on. But so it was amazing. So you're not alone. Parents with children on a spectrum, you're not alone. And the first things we felt when Jacob was diagnosed was that, what do we do? But then we realized that autism really didn't just define Jacob. It was just who he is and who he was and who he is now. And
autism is just a label.
And right. And so, at some point, we then started realizing that instead of just focusing on Jacob's, autism itself, we should take some of our energy and focus on some of the gifts that Jacob was showing at such a young age. And so we did, and he is just blossomed so much.
I really loved what the Velazquez were talking about. I don't know if I said your name right, sorry.
Okay.
But it's called the show don't tell principle. So much of it is kind of more of a social delay. And the show don't tell principle is these kids, in order to be able to get really good jobs, whatnot, you have to develop their talents where they are, lift them where they stand, because they will excel inevitably, whether it's music or science or math or whatnot. Generally, it's because they can access too much of their brain, is why there becomes a little bit of a neurological experience with sensory input. And, I mean, you can imagine if you were somebody in a very crowded, loud room, you'd get a little bit overwhelmed too. So if you can help bring that system down, then the brilliance comes out. A lot of people just, as they get older and they go undiagnosed, just go do a lot of adaptability, run around stuff. But then in essence, it kind of keeps them from being able to really have healthy relationships, and not because they weren't taught how to calm and control in certain social situations. At least this is my experience. And like I say, you meet one person with autism, you meet one person with autism. They're all so different. You're not just going to look for, okay, this is one answer, because every child's going to have a different answer. Every child, one's going to need one type of therapy, another's going to need a totally different type of therapy. But it's just not worth it for these children not to be made as comfortable as possible, because we will lose. I think one of the thoughts is possibly Steve Jobs was on the spectrum. Like, he was brilliant. What did he bring to our community? What did he bring to our society? I'm literally holding an iPhone right now. It's not worth it for us not to drop all of our things we're doing, work hard as parents, and find out how to make them comfortable so then they can shine.
That was an awesome answer. I couldn't agree more. And I'm very thankful to say that I was diagnosed and treated very, very early in my life, so that even by the time I was in middle school, I was almost a normally functioning kid. Even now, I still have some things that I have to get used to, and there are things that I'm going to have to go through my entire life that are going to be different from other people. But I can safely say that I can function on my own if I need to. So, I really appreciate your advice, for both of you guys' advice for any parent who happens to have a child with autism, because, as I said earlier in the intro, it's surprisingly common.
Jacob, in your America's Got Talent audition, you said you wanted to be on America's Got Talent to show people that just because you have a diagnosis doesn't mean you're not capable of great things. That is an incredible statement. What advice do you have for people listening who may have a physical, emotional, or mental condition such as autism?
I tell people that having a diagnosis doesn't mean that you're not capable of great things. It just means that you're unique, different, and cool, and weird, like we said earlier. And I also like to tell people that, if you have a passion and a dream, work hard at it, but also have fun doing it, because that's where the inspiration and creativity sparks from.
Absolutely. I love that so much.
Thanks.
Perfect. Would you mind playing us something?
Yes. Sure.
Sweet.
So I'll make you guys know what this is.
Wow. I have no words. That is incredible. That was amazing.
I'm hard to believe that wasn't a recording. Holy crap.
How long have you been playing electric guitar?
About a year now.
A year?
Yeah.
No.
No way. Wow.
What?
Wow.
It's amazing the progression that someone on the spectrum can have with any hobby. You know, it's very common for those on the spectrum to be very passionate about something to the point they pursue it like crazy, and they get really good at it. They are really knowledgeable in it, and they gain those abilities really, really quickly. I, for one, can say I've been through some of these experiences, but the level of talent, the level of skill that you can see in people on the spectrum is just absolutely incredible, especially how they progressed to what they are now so fast. So well done.
Thank you.
It was Coldplay. Viva la vida.
Viva la vida. Yes.
I forgot.
I chose that song because, I used to rule the world.
Oh. I'm stupid. I should have known that. I love that song.
It's an oldie but a goodie.
Yeah. So we'd like to thank Summer for her great insight and the incredibly talented Jacob Velazquez. Follow Jacob on Instagram at Jacob Velazquez Official and check out his music on YouTube.
Whether you have a diagnosis that affects you physically, mentally, or emotionally, you are capable of great things. Please don't label or judge someone because of a diagnosis. Look and listen to their heart. It speaks volumes.
Another great show today, guys. Thank you so much to my co-host Skyler, and also a huge thanks to everyone for listening to this episode of the Iron Kind podcast. And remember, you matter.
Okay.